I think as parents, we don't want them to face lions and bears
Right.
because it's hard to watch them. You know,
Right.
we just want it to be so easy. So many of the things that I wanted to protect her from, or that I wish that she hadn't gone through, or that were hard to watch as a parent, were the very things that God was using to create a very deep faith in her that's her own.
Welcome to both of you. Good to have you on Focus on the Family.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to be here.
Now, this is like the fruit not falling far from the tree, right? Mom author, now
is.
daughter author. Did
Yes.
she inspire you? I'm giving you a softball here.
Yes, she definitely did inspire me. She did.
It's not that every family has writers. It's kind of a hard thing to write a book. It's not easy. So The Lion and the Bear, this is a
Yes.
true story. The other night, my boys and I, we were talking about who would win in a fight, a lion or a bear. I mean, it's so
there you go.
bizarre, and here your title is.
Yes.
How'd you come up with your title?
So my title actually came from, I started hearing this my sophomore year of high school when I was going through some hard times in bullying, and I was dealing with a lot of struggles. And one time I was sitting at the dining room table with my parents because, you know, we always would debrief and talk about all the things. And my dad started saying when something hard would happen, he'd always look at me and he would say the lion and the bear. And basically what it meant was he was talking about the story of David and Goliath and just how God sent David the lion and the bear before he faced his Goliath. And my dad was just like, all these trials and all these struggles you are going through are preparing you for something greater, you know? And I think that's where I looked at it, and it was the perspective of when I was facing hard times of, this is my lion and this is my bear to prepare me to fight the giant later on.
Well, that's great context
Yes.
for how to attack
Yes.
life.
And so
Let me ask you this question, and this is really a little off the subject, but I want to get a perspective here. I've heard so many good things of what's happening spiritually at Texas A&M and
Yes.
other universities around the country. There is something going on spiritually, deep, Christian, in these campuses, secular and Christian campuses.
Absolutely.
What's going on there? Paint that picture for us.
I mean, I think a lot of it comes from my generation has started, and this is what I'm hearing from different titles of books, different things. I feel like we are being labeled the anxious generation. We are starting to become this, we're having a mental health crisis. And I think so many people I know my age all of a sudden look and they're like, only God can fix this. You know, they've looked
Wow.
and seen these things and they've seen these struggles and they're like, the thing that's going to get me out of this is my Savior. And I think there's a dependence on him in my generation.
Yeah.
And just a fire that has been kind of relit, which has been super cool to see. And I think, too, we were the first generation that kind of grew up with iPhones and social media and things like that. And we also know the damage that that can do to someone. And we're finally old enough now to kind of speak on it and talk about it. Like, I know even talking with my friends, they're always like, when I have kids, I'm not giving them an iPhone until they're older, or I'm not letting them have this. And I think we're finally getting the age where we're able to step into our faith and we're able to make some of these issues our own and take these things on. And I think that's kind of the revival you're seeing with my generation when it comes to just being so involved in the church and college.
And I've been very optimistic. I'm bullish on that. I think the Lord's hand works in generations. I mean,
Yes.
for his purposes, obviously.
I agree.
But so many people have, especially the parents,
Yes.
are so concerned and so worried, which only adds worry. You know, rather than
Yes.
us showing our confidence in Christ that he's got this, he knows what he's going to put in the hearts of the 20-somethings right now. But I just seeing my own boys, I'm going, wow, this is going to be a good generation. My son Trent said it this way. He said, we swim in a cesspool of lies looking for buoys of truth.
It's so true.
That's pretty powerful.
That is powerful.
I think that's right on the
Yeah.
money.
And I do think that's something I've thought about as a parent as I've watched this generation, because I think there were so many things that we were raised, our generation, to believe in were the truth. And we bought into all the lies. And I think from a young age for them with, COVID and different things that have happened just across the world, I think they were able to see into things of, I can't put my faith in this. I can't put my trust in this. So where does it go? It has to go to God. You start to look at a higher spiritual thing.
Which, again, we should be so excited about,
Yeah.
And it's that thing where darkness is, it won't outperform the light, and we need to be confident in that. In other words, evil won't outdo God's goodness and God's graciousness and all that. So we need to show that confidence, even when things look bleak. Getting to that, so many people think of your high school years or junior high years as perhaps the best years of your life. I'm not sure that I ever met that person, but high school can be buoyant. It's a good time.
Yes.
It can be fun, but there does seem to be a lot of pressure. Something that doesn't seem to change is the attacks of young people on other young people. For boys, it tends to be physical. As a freshman, you're standing next to a senior
Right.
going, I'll never be filled out like that guy. I won't have muscles like that guy.
Right.
And for the girls, it feels to me like it's more on the area of what your appearance is, more emotional, intellectual. You guys are kind of attacking things from that direction, where boys are just, it's your typical physical bullying. But paint that picture, and what were you experiencing in high school?
I think there was a lot of, with girls being younger, and even now I still see it, there's a lot of different politics and dynamics of how you need to perform or what you need to say or how you should react to a certain situation. And when you're in friend groups that are maybe where it's an unhealthy dynamic and you don't react the way a girl wants you to react, or you don't lean into the drama, or you don't lean in, there becomes almost this thing of people want to try to alienate you. I feel like a lot of what I experienced was I would be in a friend group. There was a girl that maybe we had issues or we didn't get along super well, and the goal was, how can I cut this girl out? That was, it was a lot of like, how can I exclude this girl from going to this, or how can I do that? That was some big things that I feel like I experienced. And it was really tough, especially with phones and stuff, because instead of just hearing about it in the hallways or maybe never knowing about it, you usually have your friends' locations. So you're looking on a Friday night and seeing all your friends hang out without you, or you're seeing them post on Instagram that they're all at the movies or at this restaurant and you're not there. And so I think it was a lot of these kind of trying to make you feel isolated and make you feel alone a little bit. And I think it's a lot of trying to appeal to certain emotional dynamics. And with drama, it was just this thing of they were looking for a fight. They'd try to say something and they'd want you to say something mean back, or they'd want you to fight back. And it was always hard trying to combat that with kind of logic and reasoning. Like, I think my dad was always just kind of like, try to take your emotion out of it and look at it factually, and just try to explain it to them logically on what's going on, what this means. And I think that it was not received well by a lot of girls. I think those dynamics are really hard.
What's tough hearing that is, and I mean this in kind of a cultural way, the formation of that. I mean, it sets you up to be a herd mentality person.
Yes.
You got to go with the herd. That's really dangerous for culture, dangerous for Christians.
Absolutely.
Where we're training one another to be part of the in crowd. And
go with the flow.
Yeah.
Don't keep your head down, please people. That's kind of and it's like, that's dangerous.
Yeah, because I think on the bigger issues of Christian ethos, that puts you in a weird spot if you're going to say, hey, I'm not going to have sex before I'm married. I'm going to do all I can to prevent that from happening, and then you're ostracized for that.
Right.
That's archaic. I can imagine the pressure that might come and how they look down upon you for wanting to have that desire. But I mean, in all that context, Melanie, as a parent, what do we do?
Yeah,
I mean, it sounds like your husband's done, and I'm sure you as well, just a good job. And I'll come back to you in a minute about those inoculations that work and maybe things that don't work. But Melanie?
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing is when you know your child is going through a hard time, or you're starting to see these friend dynamics. I mean, number one, we always paid really close attention to who is she hanging out with? Because I think so much at that age, your identity is so wrapped up in who your friends are and what they're doing. And so, we always tried to keep an eye on who is her group, who's she spending time with, what kind of girls do these seem like. And I think it's what startles you is because what started off, I was like, these are girls that I've had in our home that we've spent time with. I've curled their hair before the homecoming dance. Like, how did this turn? So, but then I think when you start to see that, I think number one, you have to take an honest look at your child. I think that's one thing as a parent where you're like, what's your role in this? Like, how could you be better? Or are there ways that you can manage it better? And then when you start to realize, no, we are taking the high road, we really are trying to handle this, then at that point, I think you have to figure out, and this is where Perry, my husband, and I really had to figure out what was the best way for her personality to handle it. Because
that's interesting.
I tend to be such a people pleaser. So I kept saying, just kill him with kindness. Just keep taking the high road. It's going to be fine. And that was okay for a while. But at some point, it was like, it's not getting any better. So I think you have to pay attention to how your child needs to handle something.
Yeah, so what did Perry say? I'm interested.
So Perry said,
lay the hammer down.
Yeah, that's basically, I remember it had been like 3 consecutive months of these girls being mean to me, and just there was no end in sight, and I didn't know what to do at this point. I'm doing what all the adults are telling me to do. I'm trying to be kind, and I'm trying to just keep my head down and ignore them, and yet girls were finding me in bathrooms and cornering me and bullying me and saying mean stuff to me. It just was like,
that's terrible.
It was rough. And I was like, I'm being kind. I'm not saying anything mean to you. I'm not talking about you. I've blocked you on my phone. I don't know what else to do. And finally I was talking to my dad about it, and he finally just looks at me and he just goes in his super calm way, not actually, but he was like, this means war. And for me, that was almost a light bulb that went off, because I realized me trying to keep my head down and just please all these people and avoid confrontation is not true to who I am and who God wired me to be. And I realized it's okay to advocate for yourself, and it's okay to show people that you're not going to tolerate, that you being cornered in the bathroom and called terrible things, And I think it finally got to the point where I was like, okay, now that I advocated for myself and I told her, I'm not going to tolerate this, and I will take measures in order to make sure this doesn't happen. I learned, it's okay to advocate and be strong and do it in a respectful way, in a way that honors God, and not calling anyone names or anything, but you can still do it.
Right.
And I think
Jesus did it with the Pharisees.
Yeah,
yes, absolutely.
Well, and who knows how many other people she was bullying.
Exactly.
So you probably helped shut down some systemic bullying. This is Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, and our guests today are Caroline Shankle and her mom, Melanie, and we're so glad to have them here as we talk about Caroline's book, The Lion and the Bear, a 100-day guide for facing your giants. Thank you for joining us for this great content, and if it's resonating with you, please subscribe so you can keep watching further editions in the future.
Caroline, let me ask you another thing we didn't mention in the open there, this, especially again in that female relationship context, comparison.
Oh.
Guys have this too, but for us it's more athletic, I think, Do we match up physically? We're just like bear cubs.
Yes.
Can I take him? Can he take me? But for girls particularly, a lot of comparison.
Yes.
What do I look like? Do I fit in? But speak to that. And you encountered a young lady who was bullying you, and you started looking at him a little more deeply. What happened with her?
I was going into being an animal science major and going into the ag school. And I did not grow up in the ag world necessarily. And everyone I was with did.
In Texas.
And so in Texas, at Texas A&M, of course.
Yes.
And so they weren't going into it knowing all of this stuff. And they had all these scholarships and all these different things. And I remember I was talking to my professor and I was like, I don't know what to do. She's doing this and she's doing this. And he just kind of looked at me and he was like, hey, comparison is the thief of joy. And I was like, oh. And it was just a light bulb for me almost of this, I've been so busy comparing myself to others, I'm forgetting my own assets and what I have and the joy that I have and how God created me. And I think it's something that's so common with girls, but it's this, I feel like there's so much comparison in looks and in accomplishments. And even, I faced it even in sports, with soccer and stuff. We were all vying for scholarships. We were all vying for college coaches' attention. We weren't working as a team. We were trying to just be the best individual we could be. And it usually caused us to lose games because of it, But I remember there was one girl specifically where it was just a lot of, she was a friend, but it was a lot of comments about just maybe the way I would look or something I would do. And it just made me feel a little insecure and I was like, this doesn't feel kind. And then one day we were at her home and her mother did it to her in front of me. And all of a sudden I was just like, this is where this comes from,
the root.
And I think that was something super important. And it also kind of goes back into advocating. And when I was dealing with my other mean girl stuff in high school is there's a reason they're treating you the way that they are. And there's a reason they've learned that. And that's super important to remember because we always say, we're not even that good with Jesus. Now imagine
That's
without.
a fair statement.
Yeah.
And so it's like you realizing you're dealing with people who are really hurting and really struggling, and you have to have a level of empathy and a level of compassion and care for them while you advocate.
That's really good.
That was kind of my eyes open to that when I saw what she was dealing with at home, and I was like, oh, there's a reason she feels the need to do this to me. You know, there's something going on in her heart, and there's hurt there
Yeah.
that she's passing on to others because she's been having to struggle with it.
Yeah.
And so I think that was super important to remember.
You know, another strangulation, and I use that word very specifically because it's dramatic.
Yes.
It's perfectionism and
Yes.
anxiety. And you write about that in the book as well. These are
Absolutely.
great topics for young people. That area of perfectionism, I think so many Christians fall into that.
yes.
Like, you know, we're trying to live up to the standard of Jesus. Well, guess what? He was perfect.
Right.
We're not going to get there, but we're striving to be better as we progress through life, to be the better person, more like Jesus every day.
Yes.
Some days we'll do well, some days we'll do poorly. But speak to that idea of perfectionism, and how did you wrestle that to the ground to say, okay, I don't have to be perfect.
That was something I really struggled with in high school, especially in sports. For me, it definitely came out in soccer the most. I remember there were games where, I remember there's one specifically, it was my sophomore year when I was going through all my Mean Girl stuff, but I had made the varsity team, and I was one of the smallest, youngest players on the team, and we were playing our rival, and my coach kind of came up to me and he was like, "It's on you tonight." Like, he put a ton of pressure on me.
Put the whole team
and
on you.
I panicked. Like, I was so scared of messing up that basically I got on the field and I just shut down. Like, I barely played, you know, and people were like, it was so low effort, it was so this, and I'm like, it wasn't low effort. I was just scared. Like, I didn't want to mess up, and I was so anxious. I started coming to the conclusion, and it was a quote, and I wish I had it down and knew it immediately, but it was Teddy Roosevelt, and it was "The Man in the Arena."
Yeah, that's
is
a
the
great
quote, which is my favorite, and I live by it. Like, I have it in my room. But I finally started just realizing I'm not going to be perfect, and I'm going to make mistakes, and I would much rather go all out and do the best I can and mess up than be too scared not to do it. And I was always worried about people judging me or people making fun of me. And it just was that, you know, it says in the quote, like, those cold, timid souls that will never know victory nor defeat. And it's like, I would so much rather try than not know either, you know? And who are they to sit back and judge me for giving it my all and being the best I can be?
That's so good. Again, these are great themes: perfectionism, anxiety, comparison, all the things we're talking about. Melanie, you ring the bell for the parents here, because you're saying be careful not to reinforce these things. And you gave a couple of examples where you might say, well, you play better than that guy. I wonder why you're not first string.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a great thing, particularly for dads to think about. And then you had an example with daughters. Well, you're prettier than her. Why would they say that about you?
Yeah.
I mean, even those little subtle things that we can say that reinforce comparison and anxiety. How do we mind our own tongue as parents in this environment?
Yeah. I mean, I think you have to really encourage your child. I mean, one of the things we learned, and one of the conversations we had after one of those soccer games where we had watched her, and we were like, what's going on? And she kind of, you know, through talking to her, she was like, but I'm afraid I'm going to mess up. And what we said to her is, like, we would rather you fail spectacularly. Like, we would rather you go out in a blaze of glory and screw up than to play so timid that you're not being true to yourself. And I think that's true with life. And these kids, this generation, my friends and I that are raising kids the same age, marvel, because we're like, where did this come from? All this pressure to get it right the first time, and that everything has to be. We didn't seem to have that. And I don't know if it's a social media thing, if it's just because there is so much comparison where you can see people your age and what they're doing all the time. And but it's like, we've got to let our kids know, hey, you need to try, and you're not going to get it right. I didn't get it right the first time. You're not going to get it right the first time, and that's okay. Like,
I agree. I think the challenge for some parents watching and listening would be that, you know, where's that bottom?
yeah,
To be fair. And you think, you know, this is true. You don't have to be perfect. We just your heart needs to be in the right place, and keep trying. But there are going to be some parents that their kids are falling below that line.
For sure.
And you're going, can you try a little bit?
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't mean to go that far down. Speak to that when we're beginning to get anxious as parents because they're falling below a performance that is healthy.
And I think that is the line, that's where you have to know your child and know, I know you can do better than this. I know that you have more in this, because what we always said with her is, we never expect you to be perfect. We do expect your best effort. Like, it doesn't have to be perfection, or you don't have to achieve everything, but we need to see you working to the best of your ability and what that is, and kind of keeping an eye on where you know your kids can be better. And I think there are times as a parent, I think that we want to just be cheerleaders all the time and just be like, you're amazing, you're the best, you're great. But then there's times to be a coach and to be really honest and say, here are some ways that I see you failing and not thriving, and here are some ways you need to do better. Whether that's, I don't like this group of friends that you're hanging out with, I don't like your study habits and the way you're letting your grades fall. It's okay to have those honest conversations.
Caroline, let me end with you. You've heard the do's and don'ts, but let me ask you, as the recipient of Melanie's parenting
Yes.
and your dad's,
Yes.
what are the do's and don'ts? There are things that work for young people, things that may not work. If I can give you that quick rap sheet.
I think the first thing, and this is one I always say that was so great for me in high school, was just the way I felt so unconditionally loved. And it was very important. And at the time, I don't know if I mean, in high school, you're not necessarily thinking about all this and being so appreciative because sometimes you don't know what you have. But knowing that after a hard day, I could come home and I knew for a fact that there would be a home-cooked meal for me. I knew for a fact that if I stained my favorite pants, that she'd be able to get that out. That there's just little things where it's like, there was such a confidence in knowing my parents were going to be there and they were going to be caring for me. And I think that's so important. And some encouragement I would also say to parents is, there were times where at high school, I always had to have this mask on and I had to pretend like everything's okay. And the moment I got home, I knew I was safe and that mask kind of came off a little bit, and I was just a little bit, I was a moody teenager. And I think so often that's the side parents see because their kids feel safer with them than they do at school, maybe, if that is this making sense to y'all?
Totally.
But I think there's a level of encouragement of know that what you're doing is working and don't be discouraged if that happens, because now in college, I come back and I'm so grateful for everything my parents did. And I think too, the way you always knew when to critique and when to parent and when to also build up and encourage, because I've seen so much with my friends where their parents will just nag and nag and nag and tell them to do this and tell them to do that. And it's out of love, but there's also needs to be a balance of being a cheerleader and building up and knowing that your parents want what's best for you. And so I think the fact that y'all were able to do that for me, and I always knew, okay, they're telling me this, but I know that they love and care about me still. Yeah. This is just something I need to work on.
It's almost that old adage, you have to fill that cup up so
Yes.
that when we as parents extract a little bit in terms of performance, that you're taking out of your abundance of knowing you're loved, etc. That's a good reminder for parents particularly. Make sure your children know that they're loved.
Yes. You've got to build the relationship, because to me, if you just focus on the rules without the relationship, I think it can create this resistance, but I think when they know, hey, I'm telling you no because I genuinely love you and care for you, and this is not a good decision. They may still not like the no, but it comes with a little more understanding of that you really do have their best interest at heart.
Well, so very good. If you're that parent going, wow, I need to apply this, get in touch with us. We'll make it easy. I mean, this is great content. Not only that, I think you could see the benefits of what Perry and Melanie have done. And Caroline, you show it so well. I'm proud of you, really,
Thank
as a
you.
22-year-old.
Yes, sir.
Not to throw your age out there for the whole world.
How dare you? No, it's fine.
No, but you would be every parent's dream in terms of how you're handling yourself. And
Thank you.
Done. Way to absorb all that and to learn from it. To write a book, The Lion and the Bear, 100-Day Guide for Facing Your Giants. Why don't you just get in touch with us, make a gift of $10, and we'll send you the book as our way of saying thank you for being part of the ministry. And you get a great resource for anybody in your life, including yourself, that might struggle with boundaries.
Get a copy of the book today when you donate. You can call 800, the letter A in the word family, or click the link down below in the program description, and that'll take you to our website. While you're there, be sure to download our app so you can listen in on a regular basis. And then, of course, here on YouTube, subscribe, share this content with a friend, help spread the word about these great guests that we have on the show with such frequency. You'll get encouragement every day that you tune in. And on behalf of the entire team, thanks for watching Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back next time as we once again help you and your family thrive in Christ.